All right. Welcome back to another episode, only this time it's a little bit different. Today is the first ever of our new rebranded podcast. And we're going to drop into what that means for everyone. And it will come as no surprise to most of you because you all know that I am the lover of weird and all things weird, mostly all things. There are maybe a couple things. But anyway, we have decided to change our podcast with this transition from why to go deeper into weird. And so, welcome to the first ever School of Weird podcast. And today I'm joined with a queen of weird, I believe. I don't know if that's the right term, but uh, another absolute lover of weird. And that is Sarah Smith. Sarah, how are you?
I'm doing so good today, Frankie. How are you?
I'm doing good. And so, Sarah, tell us about you're weird and why it was so important for you to be a part of this Love Your Weird podcast, this Love Your Weird journey, and all that fun stuff. And how did you get so weird?
It's funny, I'll kind of backpedal on you for a second because I think that my weird is actually my ability to see and love other people's weird, right? Is to be able to listen to things that go unsaid and to really encourage people to have the courage to came here to be exactly who they are and as they are. So it is a deep honor to just sort of be bestowed with that. I don't know if it was um, confluence of universal factors or how that really came to be, but here it is. I've stopped questioning it and I just go with it and try to show up always with an open heart and a wild mind.
I love that. And your background is kind of interesting, and it's always kind of fun to see how we
Yeah.
kind of all culminate towards these callings that are essentially about people, but we're not, necessarily in like the typical positions always, like nonprofit or healthcare or mental health, because you and I don't think we come from any of those really.
No.
And so here we are. So what is your background, and how what's I guess how do you use your career or what you do to help people like that weird?
so so when I was an undergrad, I studied poetry, which I actually, and I also have an integrated marketing graduate degree. And it's funny because I was talking about this the other night with someone, is that it's my graduate degree that opens doors, but it's my poetry degree that gets the work done. And yeah, like for real. And I grew up in the earliest days of my career in PR. I was super poor, hustling in a pencil skirt. I think it's a cliche from a certain time and place, where a lot of us were kind of coming up in the early aughts. And I realized pretty quickly that I wanted to be in charge. I
Mm.
did not want to be hustling in that capacity. So I went to grad school, came out of grad school, and in that work landed in more traditional behemoth ad agencies as a strategist, really diving deep into consumer behavior, mining insights, getting to those macro cultural tensions of why we do what we do and what the opportunity is for story and brand. So that's
Oh,
kind
I
of
love
the long story short, and it's evolved now into the work that I do today, which is I work with big brands and thought leaders or people with a point of view. I know thought leader is one of those terms where there's a lot of sensitivity.
Yeah.
Totally get it. Totally get it. That there's like almost a self-congratulatory element to it that we want to be really mindful of, but at the end of the day, you're
Yeah.
still driving the market forces
It's like, where do
forward.
you get that thought leadership doctorate,
Yeah, right, totally. It's just a doctorate, I think.
I think you just
Um,
order your own
or
trophies.
it's self-anointed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You just gotta
So
order your own trophy on Amazon for the thought leadership assignment.
six
Mhm.
ninety nine
That's
next
it.
day delivery. Yeah. But
So I love
anyway,
that. Your journey, not to cut you off, but that, and I think that's what always, you and I have been friends now for a while, and I think where we've connected, yeah, it's on the weird, and I think we've
yeah.
connected on that word, but it essentially, there's not everybody has really found their true purpose and calling in this space where art and almost like data and strategy can
Mhm.
like live in this beautiful not knowing where one starts and the other one ends. Like, I think you and I are both wired that way.
Yeah.
to a degree. And usually somebody's more bent towards art or bent towards data strategy or things like that. And you and I've talked a lot about that duality.
Yeah.
And it is fun when you meet people that live in both those at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that's really, like, where the magic happens, and I
Hmm.
think so much of it really bubbles up to giving ourselves permission
Hmm.
to play, to be, to create, to experiment, to ideate, to evolve in those spaces. That it doesn't come down to a binary or duality of either or, but it's how
Hmm.
can we really wrap our arms so that there's more both and in this world. And
I
it's the
love
both and of like what
that.
happens inside of us.
I
And
love
that's
that.
yeah, it's one of um my favorite parts of the work that I get to do is to really lean in and excavate and cultivate that with the folks that I work with. You know,
Mm.
whether it's someone who's just starting out getting their speaking career off the ground, or it's a big brand that has a heritage and has been in the marketplace for 100 plus years.
Yeah. No, I love that.
Yeah.
And so I noticed you're wearing a shirt that
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
familiar with. Tell us about this shirt. What's your deal with this shirt?
So, how did you even send me this shirt? How did I get my hands on it? I think you were just
Oh,
started
where did
talking.
the shirt even come from? Is the
Well, it
question.
came
I
from
can't.
you.
Yes, but I can't even really remember. It's so funny because the
I
shirt
don't
thing.
either.
I don't know. At
Did you
some
give it to me in
point,
person? Did it show up in my mailbox? I
I,
don't know. All I know is I need another one because I wear
yeah,
it all the
yeah.
time.
No, I have yours right here. I gotta send it to you.
Fabulous. Yeah.
I feel like I had to have mailed it to you because
You must
there's
have.
no
Yeah.
way we waited till we met in person because the shirts came out. Let's see. Was it done
Last spring, maybe, was
in
a
like
prototype, I think.
April or May?
Yeah.
April or May of last year, the shirts came out because I wanted to do something more than just sell books. Because the thing is, a book for a lot of people can be a chore. And I found that, like, oh, let me send you a free book. It's like, oh, great, thanks for the homework, you know. And they're like, oh, I can send you the link to let me give you a free link to Audible. It's like, yeah, but like, I want to listen to music. So it's like, all right, what can I do that like isn't a chore and I can still jam to my music? And that is a T-shirt. Like I just, and I didn't realize what this T-shirt would do. Ironically, I did not realize what it would do, and it's still this funny little thing, um, in it all. But anyway, I had to have mailed it to you. We
You
must have
must have.
talked
Yeah.
about it because yeah, and then somehow in all this, like behind the scenes, you kind of fell in love with it, and I didn't really put it together till later when people were texting me pictures from Impact 11 boot camps like, "Dude, check it out. You're on TV. You're famous." And I'm not even there, and that started happening now every single boot camp. People are like, "Oh my god, look, there you are." And that was obviously your part of the boot camp. And so I was like, "Okay, something's brewing here. What is this?"
Totally. And I think it's an interesting part of the equation also because in the early moments of a movement, which is what I think this is, it's not just a part of your thinking, it's the beginning of a movement to, I think, really inspire and encourage all of us to love our weird, connect with our inner child, really ground down into those creative elements of how we show up
Mhm.
in service of something old and something new that's really just rooted in who we are.
Mm.
And I think when you actually look at what businesses and organizations and individuals are
Mm.
really seeking, it's deeper connection
Yeah.
to ourselves and to each other.
Mhm.
Like,
And it's
and I don't
unblocking
think,
what's keeping that from happening.
yes.
It's so
And I
funny.
think that's what this movement does.
Yes, and I love that, and that's why, like, just so everybody knows, Sarah's actually more than just a podcast guest. She's a big part of my team behind the scenes, and that's why we wanted to launch this together. So just fun fact there, and for everybody to know. But I think sometimes we hear these words, all right, and these broad strokes. I just got off the phone with a friend of mine, Josh, who's also a keynote speaker, not Josh Linkner. Um, and he talks about purpose and paddling and all this fun stuff. I think you know Josh, long hair Josh
Uh-huh.
Evans. Anyway, what I realize is that like so many times people take these words, like for example, be who you are, like be you,
Okay, but how?
right?
Right?
Who
Like
am I?
for a lot of us, yeah, that's not a
Yes. So
I'm trying
who
to
am I?
this
And I'm
journey.
excited about dropping into this because one thing that Sarah's helped me do is differentiate the fact that you can look weird, but you don't have to look weird in order to love your weird. And that was a big thing early on that you and I kind of like landed on was because we actually had friends of mine saying, "Well, Frankie, you don't really look that weird." And you were, I remember that happened in real time. Someone put in the chat, "You don't look that weird, Frankie." And then you responded to it and we're like, "Well, wait a second, let's double click on this." I still remember it. And you said, "Well, do you have to look weird to love your weird?" And I think that's where this becomes a movement. Because there's a subset of people, 2, maybe 5% of the population, that they just own their weird through and through. They
Yeah.
don't care, blah, blah, blah. And they're the outliers. And the idea of loving your weird not being an outlier movement is the part that makes this very interesting.
Oh, it's for everyone.
Right.
And I think that's what makes it work, is
Yes.
it's an open invitation
Mhm.
that calls effectively the best of us forward
Yes. And
to come together, to collaborate, and to ultimately deliver something that is beyond our wildest imagination.
that's right. No, and what's cool is that what I've found is people that maybe on the outside I would have judged before we
Oh,
started this
totally.
movement
Yeah.
and said, "Oh, they don't love their weird." Have come out and they're like, "Oh, I love my weird. I'm totally weird." And like they're
Mhm.
like, and everybody has their own definition of weird. And one thing I've done as far as like at a macro level is just let it fly.
Yeah.
So I don't correct people if they have a different definition of weird than me, but my encouragement is to and it ends up matching usually. Whatever they think their weird is, it's gonna
Yeah.
match what I'm about to say, which is that loving your weird is about loving that weird kid that I stopped being because of
Yeah.
X, right? And X is a bully, or X is a parent, or X is a school, or X is a system, or X is whatever mutes or masks we talk about a lot who I authentically was
Yeah.
to begin with. And, we've talked about this, and I'm sure we're going to drop into this today, but often it's these unaddressed childhood traumas that lead us to abandon our true self to begin
Mhm.
with. And even though these things are seemingly in the past, they tend to cast these long shadows over our lives. And I think where it really becomes interesting is for the people like me and I can't speak for you, but I feel like somewhat you as well, where we don't have these big traumas. Like we lost our legs at 8 years
Mhm.
old in a car accident, or we were orphaned, right? Or some other like obvious thing that you put a kid into therapy or you go to therapy for. And I could go down the list and I'm not going to right now of those types of things. And I think we're so many of us, probably the majority of people, at least in this country, it's these smaller, long term things that
Yeah,
create
I mean, I
create
think
the
that's
mute.
exactly what it is, everyone's experience is dynamic and compelling, and I think we need to hold space for and to honor.
Hmm.
But think about this, and this is, I think, one of the conversations that you and I have had that I'd like to sort of bring into the forefront is imagine the 4 or 5-year-old version of you, right? And to anyone who's like in the community or listening right now, to just really drop into that and imagine that 4 or 5-year-old version of yourself. And you go to school. And what happens when you go to school, right? You show up and you're a writer, or you want to be a cowboy,
Hmm.
or you want to be a doctor, right? And so you kind of play that, you mimic it, and you get a sense of what it feels like to imagine it. And what happens is you get shot down pretty quickly, right? There's the you can do anything. And there's this level of like rah rah encouragement. But at the end of the day, it's like stand in line, get in line, take your number 2 pencils out, tie your shoe, follow the rules, stay in line, and
Yeah.
so on, and that continues,
Stop
and I think
dreaming.
what
Stop
Yes, stop
daydreaming. Yeah.
dreaming, and what happens, I think, to us is and through that, I'm sensitive to use the word trauma, but it
I
ties
want a new word. What should we use?
Oh,
I really want a new word that doesn't have so many different.
it's loaded for sure.
Yes.
Yeah,
And quite frankly, I don't mind the loaded as much as I mind the overuse of it.
yeah. I
It's
think
being
that
overused. We've
it's
gotta come up with a new word.
conditioning, I think, in a lot of ways, like, that it isn't necessarily a moment of
Oh,
trauma,
I like that. Yeah,
it's a series of conditionings or
yes, and it's
behaviors.
not and the people that are doing the conditioning aren't necessarily doing it consciously.
No, and they're not necessarily doing it, I don't think, with the intent to harm.
Right. Oh, no. It's not consciously,
Yeah.
and it's got good intentions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's,
I
I
think
think, what
that's a
makes it
theme.
so nefarious, is that
Yes.
it's easy to
There
get
you
caught up in that because that's oftentimes in school where we're rewarded and where the accolades come from, right?
Mhm.
Follows directions on your little report card that you get, in the earlier years.
I
You're
love this.
effectively graded on your ability.
You just gave me an idea to update the TED Talk I'm doing next week because I've been dropping into the trauma component.
Yeah,
But I just drop in for a second, like 2
yeah, yeah,
sentences, and it hasn't felt quite right because it's
yeah.
such a huge thing. It's like its own TED Talk. But
I
I
completely
but if
agree.
I but thinking of it in terms of that often it's our unaddressed conditioning
Mhm.
from childhood and those early years
Yeah.
that leads us to
And I
abandon
think a
what we
big
know.
part of it really is the reward system that reinforces those behaviors that while they help us, I'm going to say, navigate the
Interesting.
system, we lose our connection to our most creative, interesting, and brave self.
Yeah, because our schooling is essentially still it's trying to reinvent. But if you think about it in the context of like the Industrial Revolution, when schools became very popular, right? It was all to kind of bring you into a place where you were prepared for your adult role in the
Right.
Industrial
For
Revolution.
society to
Yeah,
be, right, like
yeah,
this
because
highly
we were building
functioning.
the whole society on
Mm,
this Industrial Revolution.
right.
And so now there's this huge shift because now there's a new industrial revolution. My friend John McElligott says it's the fourth one,
Yeah.
and everybody wants to debate him on if it's the third or the fourth. It's irrelevant. It's a new revolution, and this revolution is very different because normally the revolutions affect the blue collar jobs first, and now all of a sudden we have a revolution that's
Oh, yeah.
affecting
You're coming for the knowledge
white
worker
collar first,
down
blue
left right.
collar is right behind it, but
Yeah.
no one will be unaffected by it, but the solution is not what it same as it was before,
Yeah.
or maybe it is the same. I mean, when we got fire, there were things we when back then, right? When the discovery of fire, we were able to stop doing certain things that we before fire had to do.
Yeah. The fire and the
Uh,
wheel,
yeah, and then we got
the
the wheel,
printing press.
right? And then you have the industrial revolution. And
Right.
so each step of the way, like our evolving is essentially calling us to, you know, I don't know. You and I haven't really talked about this idea of consciousness because I talk about a loaded, overused word, but this raised consciousness.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I, yeah, I don't want to get on too much of a rabbit trail there, but essentially it does force us to like level up our role in things. But sometimes in the effort to level up is this like mental gymnastic.
Yeah, I think, it's really interesting. Like, in our quest to
Always we're
level
leveling
up,
down,
we
actually.
all I was gonna say we level
Yeah.
out,
Yeah.
right?
Level
Like, that's
out.
where
Yeah. Level down,
we
level out. Yeah. It's not,
we flatten.
yeah. Mm.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and see, and because I think because one or two things can happen with the AI deal. It can either diminish our uniqueness, or overshadow our uniqueness, or we can use it to enhance it.
Mhm.
But the choice is ours, right? It's still not taken over the world and killed all humans. So we still have an opportunity to direct this to some degree, and at least what we're going to do with it. And I think I don't know. I mean, I think that it's important that we're looking at all of that, but always through the lens of, you know, who are you? Like, if like,
Yeah,
let's just say we all agree, everybody gets to be who they are. It's like, okay, well, then it's like, who am I? And then so the first thing is, oh, I'm a keynote speaker, or I'm a branding person,
right.
or I'm a firefighter. It's like, no, that's not who you are. That's what you do.
That's what you do. Yeah.
Yeah, and you and I have done a couple of these intensive type things. Obviously Hoffman and on-site and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And at Hoffman, they don't let you say what you do for a living, right? When you're there, you have to.
No, that's
Perfect.
actually one of the first
That's
things they
that's the
do when
first
you
thing.
walk in.
On-site, yep, and on-site's the same way, and it's one of the most important tool. It's one of the most important things about the whole week, because it really puts
Yeah.
you in this place of like, what do I talk about? Can't talk about what I do for a living. Can't say what I do. So so I have to. My relationship with all these new people is based on anything but
Yeah.
what I do for a living as an adult, which is the most amazing exercise to go through.
Oh, yeah, I went on a date last night, which was a huge
Yes,
deal for me, and I
right.
never asked this person what they did for a living.
I love it. And did you get it?
Never,
What did you
and
do?
at
No,
the end of the night, they commented on it. They were like, "You never asked what I did," and I said, "I don't care."
it's
And
so
it's not that
cool.
I don't care,
Of course, of
but
course.
I just I don't though.
Yeah, not well,
I was
especially not on a first date. That's beautiful.
no, I was
I
way
love that.
more interested in how do you think about the world? What is the relationship you have with your family? What are your hopes and dreams? Where do you want to go?
Yeah,
Like, care what you
right.
do.
No, I
Yeah,
love.
like, are you fulfilled? Are you
Mhm.
connected to the world around you?
That's
Way
right.
more important.
That's right. And I think, at the end of the day, a big thing for me is consistently going back to that.
Yeah,
um, you know, who am I? And so then let's just say we've got it defined, right? And we're going to figure out who we are. It's like, okay, where do you start? And I think you and I connected on the fact that like the best place to start is going back
it's to your weird.
to our weird. And our definition of weird, as we said before, is that 5, 6 year old version of yourself before the conditioning, which
Mhm,
definitely loving that, the conditioning started to changes, and not and over a long period of time.
mhm.
I think that's with traumas, it's like, oh, this is a specific event. It's no, it's like thousands or millions of events.
Oh, it's a series of those micro moments that ultimately ladder up to the tapestry of your personality.
Yeah. But if you think about it, the things that have been the most fulfilling as an adult, when you do this exercise, you think about what was I into at 5, and you know mine. It's you
Yeah.
know, astronaut, cowboy, inventor, now firefighter, TV preacher. So yeah, I'm 4 or 5 things at once and probably closer to 12. But and you're gonna tell us yours in a minute, I'm sure. But the thing about it is that the things in my life that I've done, like inventing a software as an adult, like that's one of the most fulfilling things I've done
Yeah,
because it allowed for me to be the inventor. Learning how
exactly.
to fly a plane. I mean, I haven't got to fly in several months, and Millie was arguing with me last night. She's like, "Wait, you can't fly a plane." And so then I pulled out a video of me flying a plane. She's like, "Oh, okay, it's a small plane." And Dean and Bear are like, "Yeah, it's a private plane." It's like, yeah. So anyway, I kept thinking that what made me like exercising my like wanting to be an astronaut was like that I'm on the waiting list for Virgin Galactic. And I
Yeah,
realized recently, I was like, no, that's not it. It's actually, well, it's a couple things. You're going to get a kick out of this. So
okay.
one is I'm a pilot, right? And then the other part is like, okay, so last night I went to Target, and
Oh boy, okay.
I did not go to Target to buy this. And what this is a self-leveling. You can see it's got different like things in the back here. This
Okay,
is the
yeah.
type of thing that would cost me $600 and a million failures to build as a child. Now it's $79. And so like I sometimes I used to get bitter about the whole toys being so much better now that I'm an adult. And then the last several years I just started buying them for myself. So this is not for my
Smart.
kids. This is
Yeah.
for me. And I've learned that, like, and I came home and I said, baby, I finally figured it out. This is part of my weird therapy. Because she's like, why do you buy so many robots and stuff? So like I also have this guy. This isn't for the kids. This is probably $1,000 robot, right? That dances and
Mhm.
serves no real purpose other than the fact that it continues me down my road of like astronauting, inventing, and all the stuff that I loved. And
Mhm.
I, I I couldn't put it into words until I was driving home last night and thinking of the ways I'm going to justify explaining this to my wife, because it's not about the $79 for my wife, obviously. it's about more junk in the house. We got
Yes,
8 people
yes.
living here. It's like, "For God's sakes, what are you doing?" And then she's also seen me, like, fly it once, and I might only fly this once. And you know what? I'm okay with it because then I was like, "You know what? This is most of our meals are more expensive than this guy, and this is gonna keep me on my journey for loving my weird." So, I bring all that up because, like, I've I I'm flying these planes and just as a private pilot, and I've done a lot of work on horses, and I wear cowboy boots, and I've got the cowboy piece, and I obviously like I'm a keynote speaker, which isn't a preacher, but there's a pulpit,
Ish. Yeah,
there's a pulpit, there's a stage, and there's people in seats. So if so facto, so anyway, I've found so much fulfillment now as I've really owned that stuff,
yeah.
but to be honest, everything I just named is not really like what you put on your resume for work. It's
Well,
really
I
you
don't know.
can,
I feel
and maybe
like
you should, but I
yeah.
never did.
Yeah, it's interesting for me, and I've been thinking about this quite a bit, since we've been working together over the last couple of months, and I think about this twofold. Number one, at a deeply personal level, and number two, like how do we collectively encourage people to become more connected to these parts of ourselves? And I
Yeah,
think a big part of that shows
a
up in
and
what we
why
model.
and why we do that. Like,
Right.
I think that's a big part too.
Yeah. And for me, I was an artist and I was a poet and I was a hairstylist.
Mhm,
And it comes down to doing those things
mhm.
to actually.
After you were a hairstylist, I like that.
Oh yeah, I was a hairstylist. I was, I think, a whole stylist, like the hair, the makeup, the dress. And how do you continue to do that and bring
Mhm.
it into not just your work but your life?
Yes.
And it's interesting too because I think sometimes we get so focused, particularly as, successful, high achieving individuals.
Mhm.
We get so focused on the work part of the equation without thinking about what happens outside of work or beyond work, because
Yeah.
I also think it's a huge part of ultimately how we connect to who we are or to our weird. I'll share a story if you're okay with it,
Yeah, go with it.
um, about the hairstylist in me.
Okay.
So this has to do with your 5-year-old.
Oh, that's right. Now I know where this story's going. Go for it.
So when we were together, after, her being outside in Colorado, wearing the hat, the helmet, the whole
Mhm.
thing, ended up with these massive dreadlocks. And, we're sitting in the place, and all of a sudden I hear screaming, like a child screaming at the top of their lungs. And it activated something in me. And so I just ran in there and I see
And this is because you don't
Frankie
hear this every day, so
with a giant pair of scissors ready to cut these dreadlocks out. I was like, "No, don't cut the hair." And so then I sat there with Millie, with your 5-year-old, for about 45 minutes undoing the
Yeah.
dreadlocks.
Not yeah,
And
that's yeah.
yeah, and it was such a, like, just a wonderful, beautiful, like, moment, but also it's doing something related to, like, who I was or who we were, like, at that, 4 or 5-year-old self.
Yeah.
And it's a way to, I think, like, really drive connection. And, like, we're not just connected to ourselves, we're connected to
Yeah.
the world around us, and, like, we're doing what we came here to do. And I think that's how we change
Yeah.
lives. And
Yes,
it was
100%,
really.
and
Yeah,
I think it's partly too, like, identifying it, because obviously you didn't walk in there to reconnect with your inner child, you just, heard a child screaming and it was terrifying, but the fact that you, in the moment, and at least in hindsight, can see that, and if we do this work and we're inventorying in hindsight our lives, we
right.
can start to see we're like, wait, maybe there was more to this, especially as it relates to work, but and not. And it's funny, I hear people like, I don't quote Elon Musk that much, but the thing that I keep hearing is like, I've heard him talk about this, and other people
Yeah,
like just how much everything's about work. And it doesn't
right.
surprise me that it's coming from Elon Musk, because I mean, I have no idea what that guy does outside of work. And
He yachts.
I, what
He
is
was
he?
a yacht captain, so he yachts now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank God. Glad he found something. Um, but for me, I was the same as him, so I'm not judging him by any means. But it's interesting because like everyone is like, what are people going to do if all the robots replace their jobs? And it's
Right.
like they won't have livelihood and they won't have purpose, and that's what they keep saying, and it keeps kind of rubbing me in an interesting way,
Mm.
because it's like I'm not sure if Elon's gone to Hoffman or Onsite. If you're listening, Elon, I highly recommend it. Uh,
I'll double that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But I think at the end of the day, like that
What'd you
idea
say?
that like if the robots take our jobs and regard I don't know, let's just assume it's universal pay or some
Okay.
way we're getting our income, blah blah blah. I don't want to get into the politics of it, but let's just say that that world exists. So like now we don't have any purpose because we don't have a job. Like it's very telling, and
Yeah.
it's good they're starting the conversation because we do need to talk about what people will do. But like this idea, and I guess I'm just more so removed from it nowadays. This idea that like our job is our purpose, and obviously it can be. You and I's is
Sure. Yeah.
and a lot of what we do is our job. So, but you have to reverse into that to a bit.
Yeah.
Right? I've got to figure out my calling, my purpose, who I am, if I'm going to say that, oh, my work is part of that.
Right. I think it's one of those things that continues to evolve, right?
Mm.
If you had asked me, and probably the same if I had asked you or anyone out there at 25, what is your purpose? It would sound quite different than it does at 42.
Yes,
Right?
exactly.
And I think that's been one of the most powerful pieces, for me to really dig into and reflect over the last year or so of, like, how do I understand what my purpose is? How do
Mhm.
I connect with the things that really light me up? And when you feel lit and when you feel in flow, right?
Yes,
Like,
of course.
hours go by, you feel energized, suddenly, like, all that lower back pain just melts away,
It.
right? And it's interesting because for me, it's been a big part of, like, where my purpose, or where I feel centered and ignited, and my purpose is really around connection, and that my purpose is to help people to connect
Mhm.
to themselves and to their people. And I see that as a
And when
translation
you do
now.
that, that's when you feel like you're most in your flow.
Yes. And
Interesting.
as a brand strategist, I think about it that way. It's like I help brands connect with their people.
Mhm.
And so
Wait, when you
when
say brands, you mean like the company, basically, the
the
organization.
company, the individual,
Connect with the people within and connect with the people without.
yes, to connect with their people.
And if that could be their teams, their people, that could be their
Uh-huh.
customers, could be their
Exactly.
stockholders. Okay. I love it.
Yep.
So, okay, it's interesting you said this because I had not thought of this till right now. But I'm big into like the whole helper's high, limitless drug,
Right.
and like what's unlocked. And now there's science, and obviously I haven't even
Yeah.
read all the science. I'm not a true scientist. I'm a fake 5-year-old scientist. However, I'm a 5-year-old scientist and certified at that.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I just found out there was science to this. Not that I honestly, I'll be honest, I don't really care that there's science around it because I've experienced it so much. Like I don't need the science,
You have the lived
and you could
experience,
just make
right?
me the science if you'd like.
Yeah.
But I love that. I never thought of flow, like what I call getting high and what you call flow.
Hmm.
They're essentially the same thing as far as what's going on in our brains and the
Right.
incredible euphoric, like cross dimensional
Your
experience we're
dopamine
having in the
is
moment.
off the chain.
Yeah.
Yes. Huh?
And so that's what, and but we get there, call it flow, call it high, call it limitless drug. We both get there the same reason. It's because we're helping others doing X.
Hmm.
And I've always said helping others is your purpose or your why. Passion is the compass. You know,
Mm.
I was just talking to Josh Evans, and he was like, "Yeah, I feel like purpose is the map, and your passion is the compass." I'm like, I agree with you on the passion is the compass, but I feel like purpose is like the earth. I mean, like it's the whole
Mm.
thing. It's the entire our purpose is not a map, right? Because there is no map for it. It's this like it's an essence and it's a lifestyle.
Interesting. Yeah.
But the
You know
compass is where we
yeah.
point it. Like, because essentially, like, we're all humans, and so our bodies are structured in a way that is relatively similar. Okay, which means some chemicals work a little bit different in different people,
Yeah.
right? And so there's some variance, but in general, like, there's some universal things about the way that our bodies are structured as this species.
I think our purpose is how we get there.
Yes, but essentially, so I my whole thesis has always been like this idea of helping others, something outside of me, something bigger than me, even if that's
Mhm.
just one other person, but something outside of me helping others do blank.
Yeah.
The the first step is like
Do you even feel like you need to have that do blank?
me?
I mean,
No,
yeah,
I don't.
right, because it
I
could
don't
just
think I
be
need to do blank for the purpose part.
right.
However, like the activation of my purpose, and maybe
Okay,
that's
so
where
maybe that's your
I
how.
so
Is
yeah,
yeah,
to me the how is passion. Figuring out what I'm passionate about, which by the way is tied to your weird.
yeah,
The reason why I transitioned from why to weird. Okay, let's double click on that for a minute. The thing you have to know is I have not transitioned from why to weird. I I am still in the why. I just realized that I needed to go deeper. So
okay.
in my journey, I have realized that why is very vague and very broad. It doesn't mean I'm not still passionate about why. In fact, I'm actually more passionate about why than ever before.
Mm,
Okay. I am more about the why than ever before, but I'm actually about helping other people than just me
mhm,
unlock it.
yeah,
And I started to realize this when my wife, Tracy, read my first book and couldn't get past the third chapter because she felt like the way I was speaking about purpose and why would work if you were just like me.
mm,
Like, so if you do just like me and you're just like me, you can master your purpose. But if you're
mhm,
not, I don't know what to do with this.
mhm,
And so, and my wife is the queen of telling me that, right? So she will, if it lines up with her, like, I don't know who it's probably gonna line up with everybody.
yeah,
Like, that's my litmus test. She's the hardest one for it to line up with, but once it does, I'm like, okay, good, I got something.
mhm,
Yeah. So anyway, so my transition to my focus on weird, right? So I haven't left why. Why is is the universe
okay.
that we're
Yeah, so
living in.
you're evolving, yeah,
Yes, but I'm absolutely evolving because what I'm realizing is that because the way I got to weird was actually through this concept I'm telling you about right now. This
okay,
idea that I believe all of our purpose as humans is to help others. That's our
right,
highest purpose. And that's where our most long lasting, most beautiful money can't buy fulfillment, especially when we're helping them in
mhm,
without expectations, without taking score, maybe call it unconditional. When we're in that space, it's so beautiful. Okay. So that's great. Great. Thanks,
yeah,
Frank. Thanks for letting me know that. All right. I mean, that's as basic as like saying, like, there are no commandments, we just love each other and love God,
yeah,
like that kind of basic stuff. But even that type of stuff is like, well, okay, what does that mean? And so that idea of like, what does that mean drew me deeper from like 2015 when I did the art of why. And as I've gone deeper, I've started to figure out like, okay, where do you point that? So the reason I have the like blank, helping others do blank, the reason I added that is because
yeah,
that's where I think a lot of people get lost. It's like, am I supposed to do that? What is the highest use of my individual contribution to that? And so I started for a while. I was calling it passion. Like,
okay,
this is what I'm passionate about. Okay, but then I started to realize a lot of people aren't passionate,
mm,
not
mhm,
anymore. So they're not passionate about anything. So then I was like, okay, well, wait a second. Let's go deeper. All right, and let's start looking at, okay, when was the last time I was passionate? And I traced it back to the most universal moment that I could find for all humans,
mhm,
which essentially is what landed me on the 5-year old. Because most 5-year olds, and I think part of it is that 5-year olds, one of the earliest memories we can remember is
sure,
part of that. Because I mean, quite frankly, our 2-year old or 3-year old self might even be better, but good luck remembering that. Uh, but 5 is this kind of like middle ground. And here's the other thing at 5, we've not really gotten into school yet. So a lot of it's been at home or in safe environments with people that and conditions that we know that we can act out without judgment,
Mhm.
and then all of a sudden we bring that act on the road and things start to get weird, right? So, one of the things that I've found is that sorry, I just realized I hadn't plugged my computer in. One of the things that I've found on the journey is that really trying to uncover the passion. Again, that's just a statement, right? What are you
Yep.
passionate about? And then so people say, like, my kids, or I like to yacht if I'm Elon Musk, I guess, or whatever. And it's like, that's my passion. It's like, great. But when you're trying to kind of explore a holistic life,
Yeah.
a life where you're living wholeheartedly, which is where I was when the word weird became a
Mhm.
thing. Okay. So what happened was I found myself at onsite going through not a work crisis, but a personal crisis. I was
Mhm.
going through this divorce. I
Yeah.
was had all these major setbacks and failures, and there were some incredible things happening, like Tracy and I's relationship, and it was
Yeah.
beautiful. And then on the other side, it was like trying to navigate a divorce. And so these things were happening at the same time.
Mm.
And I started doing a lot of work. So before I went to onsite, I did hundreds of hours with multiple therapists because I was trying to figure out what should I do.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Should I do this relationship? Should I do that relationship? Should I
Yeah.
do, you know, and I'm thinking that that's the problem I need to solve. And then once I finally did it, I did this exercise and I actually was in a workshop with him last night. So there's this guy, Dudley Banvenu, who's one of my counselors, and he
Okay.
had me do this journaling exercise. And he said, just I don't want you to judge it, just journal every day, journal every day. And I hadn't journaled in years. So I just started journaling and I was journaling my feelings. And then what he had me do is he had me go back and circle certain themes. Okay. And then count the themes. And what I can tell you is in like 40 pages of journaling, it
Mhm.
ended up being like I would say, I think we did the numbers. It was like 13% of the things I circled had anything to do with a relationship or a divorce or all the things I thought was going on. 13%. Almost all of the rest of it was this like battle of me not feeling like I had been living my authentic self.
Mhm. Can you talk a little bit more about the specifics of the exercise?
Yeah.
'Cause I think
So,
this is like a power tool
okay.
that yeah.
This is definitely, this was a big
Mm.
one because I was, when I saw it, I was shocked. So because the secret to this exercise is he didn't tell me what how to measure it till after.
Right.
So the
Okay,
first
so
thing is
let's say that you're gonna brief me on this, and then
yeah,
you're
if
like,
I'm
"Here."
briefing you on it, I didn't tell you that other part. I'm just like, I want you to just every day you're going through this huge emotional upheaval. You don't know what to do. I really
Uh-huh.
want you to journal it. I want you to just write. Don't judge it. It can be
So,
scribble.
like, write
It can be
emotions
something,
or, like,
yeah, it can be
what
something
is
that only you understand. Like, oh, I don't know what to do with this, and like my
Hmm,
kid, what's going to happen to my kids, and are they going to get
okay.
screwed up, and is God going to be mad at me, and you
Hmm,
know, you know, who am I? Why is this happening? What am I supposed to do? Does she love me? Like, so you're going on and on and on,
okay.
but you're getting it out, and there's no system to that. You're just
Okay.
writing, and I write more like kind of
So
in
stream
bullet.
of consciousness kind of
Yeah,
like
stream of
writing.
consciousness. I
Yeah.
write kind of more like bullet points or chicken scratch. Other people write, in a story form. I
Yeah.
don't know. So
Poetry.
that part
Yeah.
doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But then once I had done that for like, I probably had been doing it for about 3 weeks. And then he was like, what I want you to do is I want you to go back and circle. So I would circle like Tracy or my ex-wife's name or something like that. Or and then I
Yeah.
would circle like things going on with the kids. There was another bucket. So actually, I remember now. So the divorce and the relationship stuff all combined was like closer to 20%. There was 12% that was purely about the way I would be perceived by others,
Uh,
my reputation. I
mm,
forgot about that. And partly I forgot about that because I've completely been set free of that in a way that
yeah.
like I am truly living a life where what you think about me is none of my business. That doesn't mean I don't understand branding from a business standpoint, but I understand that it's a tool
I
that's not
also
that's not actually like meaningful outside of
No, I think that
the
makes you a
mechanism of
stronger
getting in the
brand. It
room.
makes you a more honest and a more genuine
Exactly.
brand.
Well, and
And I
that's kinda where what we're
yeah,
well, that's you and I recently is like, okay,
yeah,
cool. Like before it was like, cool, I'm gonna use brand as a tool. Now I'm not even using it as a tool. It's just this is what it is.
right.
Like,
It's who you are.
yeah, but if you don't
Mm,
like me, that's okay. That because I don't that's
that's
then that means it's
interesting.
the wrong room for me. So 12% was just about how like I was gonna like how much it was gonna screw up my reputation or affect my business or all these other things. Basically, because I come from this community where a lot of the people that I know come from this, classic kind of
Mhm,
Christian background, and so you just don't get divorced, and then if you're not talking about that the
yeah,
God breaking vow part of it, then you're talking about like how could you do this to the children, and it's going to f up their lives, So you got that, but really that left, let's see, 78 no, 68%, almost 70%. So almost 70%, I started to realize that this had nothing to do with anyone but me.
yeah.
And so that's when me and Dudley started to really go deeper on this idea that like I had not been living wholeheartedly
Mm,
or authentically, and that what was causing this divorce and why it inevitably was the right thing to do was that I had been living with pretense for so long that I
mhm.
had forgotten who I was. In fact, so like he's the guy, and this exercise, because we did these exercises, we also did exercises where we went from like before I was born all
Oh,
the way through to when I was
oh, wow.
36. Because at the time I
Wow.
was 36, and
Yeah,
by the way, he had 0 to 18 on one page and 19 to 36, which just happened to be even math. And like this is when I was living at the house, and I got married super young, so this is his other relationship. And when
mhm,
you see the correlations in the systematical repetition, it was
yeah,
mind blowing.
yeah.
And so anyway, all of these exercises, I started to realize I had been living in this pretense. I've been living in like,
Mm,
and I had gotten good at it. That's the
yeah,
problem. Like I had just written my
yeah.
first book, I got the big house, and like as far as I was looked at, I was slaughtering it. 3 kids, just like crushing it
Yeah,
in
I
the
get it.
spaces that I wanted them to crush.
Totally.
And literally right after I buy this big house and write the book, I get a divorce. It's like, wait, what's going on here? What's going on? And everybody's shocked. They're like, wait, you didn't even have a bad relationship. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like people told me the same thing when I got sober. It's like, oh, you didn't seem like much of a drug addict. It's like, yeah, think about that for a minute. Didn't seem like a drug addict, and I had a great relationship. And yet now I'm 16 years sober and I got divorced. So where's the common denominator there? Freaking denial and dishonesty is the
Yeah.
common denominator. Okay, so honesty started to become everything for me because we can debate right and wrong, and I've
Mm,
probably talked to you about this a little bit, like this idea of like, is it right? One religion thinks it's right to blow things up and
sure.
fly planes into places, and then other people or cultures or religions think that like, oh, that's totally wrong, and it's like who's
Yeah,
right
I
and
don't
who's
know.
wrong.
I'm sensitive to that because I don't know how much of that is truly religion versus like
Well, yeah,
maybe
first of
being
all, it's
radicalized
well, the
and
religion is the
yeah,
justification for it. Like there's
right.
clearly much deeper. But my point is that
Yeah.
this debate of right and wrong is the wrong debate. The
Mm,
debate is, do I have
okay.
to lie about it?
Say that again because I think
Okay,
it's so important. The
okay,
debate about right and wrong
okay. So
is not
everybody wants to
yeah,
debate right and wrong and good and evil, black and white. Like as if one, those are the only two options, and two,
yeah.
that's the right question. That's the wrong question. You see, I always tell people, I'm like, all right, first of all, you know, most of the people I'm talking to think that it was wrong for the planes to fly into twin towers, right? But
Yeah.
then there's people right now that think that it was right and God told them to do it. So who's right and who's wrong? And then they're like,
Mhm.
they don't really answer it. I said, well, let me ask you the question another way. How many lies did they have to tell to get the two planes into the towers? And the answer is millions over 8 or 10 years or whatever it was, right? Millions of lies.
Mhm.
So my north has become, do I have to lie about it? Like it's that simple. And so it starts with, okay, do I have to lie to Sarah about this? But then the real work is, do I have to lie to Frankie about this?
Mhm.
And that is essentially all of the
Mhm.
work that we're on. Because most people think they love their weird because they've got a piercing and a tattoo and their hair's long and they've got all this other
I
stuff.
don't
And
know
then
if that's most people, but that's one way of
many
like
people,
outward self-expression.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. Many people that's where they're at. But they might not actually love their weird. They might actually hate their weird,
Right.
right? And this might all be, it may
Mhm.
be in line. All of those external things might be perfectly in line with your weird. And there's a lot of people out there, and I love it. I'm here for it. But there's a lot of people where it's the inside job that's missing, and they
Mhm.
and like for me, I didn't even know. I did not
Yeah.
know that I wasn't loving my weird. I did not know that I was 14 different people in different rooms and that I wasn't living wholeheartedly and the toll it was taking on me. I didn't know that. And it took a traumatic experience of a divorce with 3 young children and everything else for me to get to a space where I I had to look at it. It's a really intense thing to
Yeah.
try to unravel all the things that are what you believe to be true and get down to this. There's a reason why not a lot of people don't do it. It's because it's very uncomfortable and it's scary. Because it's like one of the things that we were talking about this week, me and Dudley, and this was funny. He said, you should use this, Frank. He said, because the work we did, you know, when you do this work of
Mhm.
like clearing out what's in between you and your weird, which is
Yeah.
this
Mhm.
conditioning, sometimes it's trauma and all those things, you're going to find a lot of crap, but you're also going to find your calling.
Mm. Oh, that's really beautiful.
Wasn't
So
that good? I was like,
no,
whoa.
it's so good. How would you and I'm kind of reading in between the lines here, and I know just
Yeah,
a little
sorry.
bit.
That was a rant, but
No,
that's what
it
we were
was
doing, right?
perfect. It was so good because I think what this really is about, and it's been a big part of your own, I think, larger recovery journey,
Mhm,
is taking inventory.
mhm.
And so how and I'm trying to, I think, bring some of the elements of this conversation into more practical, actionable terms,
Yep.
because I think so many of us are just yearning for that, right? And so when you go through this process of taking inventory, how would you talk how would you talk us through that?
The thing about the inventory, a lot of people take inventory. And I think where they go wrong, there's 2 ways you can go wrong with taking inventory. One, you can
Okay.
not take it or leave something out. So
Yeah.
not take it at all or leave something out and just think that, I have general ideas of what's going on. But if you think about your brain and you think about your body as a store and think of
Hmm.
it like a hardware store, okay,
Okay.
not a food truck, a hardware store with tons of like all these different screws and little things and like just uh, in no way, shape, or form could you not can you stay in business with a hardware shop without some sort of a system of understanding
Hmm.
what you have? It's like, oh, order some more screws. It's like, well, we have 1,500 different types of screws, or order some more toilet paper. Well, we have 17 of those. You have to have inventory to keep your store going. So if you think of yourself the same way, that's step one. You
Hmm.
have to at least know what's out there. But that is only the first part. So first you got to do that and then make sure that you don't skip something because you're uncomfortable about it.
Yeah.
Okay? So it has to all be out there. But the more important part of taking inventory is taking it to like my part. Okay. So when I do an inventory, I start with 4 columns. All right. First thing is what's the name of the problem?
Okay.
All right. So I name the problem.
Give me an example of that for you.
Trying to think of a safe example where I don't out anybody. Uh,
Okay.
no, I'll do Tracy. She's cool with it. Right? You ready? So I'm perceiving that the problem is Tracy. And I'm perceiving the problem is Tracy because she is doing these things to me in arguments that make me feel like not being heard, or
Mm,
that
mhm.
she's accusing me of doing something that she keeps doing, right? And
So,
it's driving me nuts.
for clarity's sake, just for my own edification on this, is
Yes.
the problem Tracy, or is the problem that you don't feel heard?
Well, so in my there
Or is
well
that the next column?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So the next column is what it affects.
Okay.
So
Ooh.
all of us
Mhm.
are really good at the first 2 columns. Sarah, it's Sarah, and she did this. We're
Ooh.
all really good at that. Okay.
Okay.
You're like, wait a second, I didn't do anything. Well, you did and you didn't. So no, but like that's how it works, right?
Yeah.
It's super easy for me to identify you or somebody else that is not me.
Something
And
external, right.
yeah, like I'm
Mhm.
really good at inventorying, like Tracy did this. And that's only half the journey. It's good that you're writing it. It's good that you're talking about it.
Okay,
But
yeah.
like, let's go further. So the third column is like, what does this affect? Okay. And so whether you're doing this for a personal relationship or you're doing it for business, it's the
Mm.
same,
Mhm. Right.
right? So like it could be like the problem is with this client. The reason there's a problem is because they're they feel like we should be doing more
Right.
about the
Or
results
they're
and
changing timelines or they have
yeah,
either
yeah,
shifting
they're changing timelines.
expectations
This
or
is the
right.
problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you get to the next. It's like, what does this affect?
Uh-huh.
Right. So on the personal side, it affects my self esteem. It affects
Right.
my ambitions. I'm like, man, do I even want to keep trying to do this parenting
Yeah.
thing? Should I just shut down and let her always make the rules? And like maybe that's the solution. But then my mind goes, okay, wait a second. I've already done this,
Yeah.
and it's called my first marriage. So it's like, okay, what do you do? So the third column is what does it affect? Does it affect my security? Like
Right.
uh, the financial security is affected by this issue with the client, right? It
Mhm.
could also affect the like long-term security of the business. So you start getting
Yeah.
into like what does it affect in the third column? The
Okay.
most important column and the purpose for the inventory and the secret to solving all
Ooh.
of our problems
Uh-huh.
is the fourth column, and that is
Okay.
my part.
Right.
Okay. So my part is the ace in all of this. In fact, it's the only reason we're actually doing the inventory. My part is the reason I'm doing the inventory because that's the piece that I can control and I
Yeah.
can impact.
Mhm.
Because when you're in the middle of this, because I do the same thing with fears, by the way, right? So it could be fears, it could be resentments, it could be an issue with the client, it could be an issue with like the product. It doesn't matter. You can use the same framework. And all of it is to get us to the part where what is my part so that I can triple down on that.
Mhm.
Okay. So,
Mm.
like, let's deal with Tracy. What's my part? Well, even though it feels like I'm the victim, which is usually how we feel, and let's just assume I am really the victim here. I'm 100% the victim. At the very least, my part is finding some acceptance in the situation and making a decision if I need to change where I stand in relation to the situation.
Mhm.
That could be leaving the room. That could be letting her know I'm not going to have these conversations, or it could be leaving the relationship, right? There's all kinds of
Yeah.
options, but that's my part. And I've got to parse that out so that I don't spend too much energy on her part or their part or a part I can't control. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
And then from there, now from there, we've got at least parsed out not only the problem. Okay, so you have to get honest about the problem, but we have to get honest about what's my part. So when I talk about
Right.
get honest, it's all about like what's my part in this. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
what how do I want to show up in lieu of the problem?
Right. Ooh.
To be a part of the solution, right? The
Mhm.
solution is, of
Mhm.
course, like with authenticity. It's like, oh yeah, you should be more authentic at your company, and we should all have more authentic stuff, and the leaders should make it a safe place where there's psychological safety. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh yeah, no, duh, and Santa should be real too.
Yeah,
And if
right.
you're listening, kids, Santa is real. But no, yes, of course, we want those things to happen. And in a utopic world that doesn't exist,
Yeah.
that's what we should be. But that's not how the world works.
No,
It
it
has to be
isn't.
in lieu of, and like, and how do I show up authentically as my true wholehearted self and be in a space of imperfection and around imperfection and be imperfect is to daily and ongoingly and
Oh,
repeatedly
yeah.
take these
That's the
inventories, get back
journey.
to my part, because once I have my part, that's when we can get creative, or in our words, imaginative. And that's where you start to imagine new ways with what I can control to
Mhm.
solve the problem that I'm having.
Yeah.
That but not trying to solve it by changing her or them.
Right, or whatever is
Saying,
external.
"Okay, look,
Yeah.
I'm going to assume they're always gonna be like this." Now, the cool thing is when you change, they change in every situation. Customers, relationship,
Mhm.
they will. Now, they may change out. It doesn't mean that you're gonna be in this relationship forever, but things change in a good
Yeah.
way. Things I can
Mm.
impact change, and I can choose that, and I think that's what this is about.
It's
It's
such
like
a
not just
beautiful
being
line to, like, really, I think, double down on too when we change, they change.
yes. Yeah, because everybody's waiting for like the
Yeah.
the top to change. The impact of the people on the change is huge. So maybe at first, let's say at work, you change, and the only other person that changes is one of your peers. But then they change, and so they change their one of their peers. And eventually, if enough people are changing, just like anything else, you look at like organized religion. That wasn't always organized. It became organized when so many people were into it, they decided to throw a net over it. I'm
Yeah.
looking at you, Romans, and like make it cool and make it theirs. And then all of a sudden, it was like acceptable. But that was because so many people changed, and the people from the bottom up changed it, as opposed to waiting for the leadership to change it, which isn't going to happen.
Mhm.
Not
Mhm.
really. We hope it will, and in some companies it will, but like the change has to be me. I'm the one.
Yeah. Mhm.
No matter what role I am the change. But I have to
Interesting
first know where
that.
I have to first stand in the place that I am before I can go to a place of this extraordinary impact. I have to first stand in the place that I am, inventory it, understand it, accept it, and then I can imagine this new world
Mhm.
that we're going to create.
Yeah.
But that's where that's why I don't as my favorite thing to talk about is imagination. My favorite thing to talk
Yeah.
about is creating novel things that don't exist.
Yeah,
My
yeah.
favorite thing. But I've learned the hard way that if I don't get honest and talk about this inventory part first and what has to be essentially cleared out or identified before you start imagining, that's where ideas just
Yeah.
die.
Yeah.
And they're just ideas. And it might be a fun exercise, but nothing ever happens and we for sure don't end up turning that quote make believe into a reality.
Okay, so in not just the transition, but let's say like the all-encompassing evolution from why to weird,
Mhm.
and then the process of going through a repositioning and a rebrand to really support that. How do you know, or how do we know, or how would you say you know when
Mhm.
it's time to go through a rebrand?
It's a great question. So I'll just talk about the one I'm in now. Um, I know it's time to go through a rebrand when I'm so conscious of the fact that the impact that I'm wanting
Uh-huh.
is not being achieved. A lot of times that's if it's enough of a of a drive or passion for me or whatever you want
Yeah.
to call it, or an urge to like really go deeper. So to me, a rebrand is about going deeper. Like, and I think that you know when to do it when you can no longer talk about, share, or promote your existing brand
Mhm.
without feeling like we're better than this and there's more. And I this is not this doesn't match anymore
Mhm.
with what I now know.
Yeah.
And you can't know that at the beginning. So, you have to start somewheres and you kind of can't get the truth in a vacuum and the
Mhm.
full picture in a vacuum. You have to get that with other people, and sometimes that comes just from the reps. Like
Mm.
there's only so many things you can do without just reps with other humans and feedback and like see, because the best way to know what my brain should be is to listen to what your audience is saying.
Mm.
Like because like I've been realizing that like I did this deal with the Outlier Project the other day, and it was so interesting because there was a whole fireside chat afterward, and the questions were so interesting because they were maybe half about business,
Yeah.
and then the other half were about like recovery and how to
Mhm.
be a father in the middle of like
Right.
your entrepreneurial crisis.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have to listen to that stuff. Like, like I was like talking about why and purpose a lot, and that was too vague. It just was too vague. And so I
Mhm.
had to shift. And then I shifted to like love your weird. But then now I've been going through like, what does love your weird mean? And
Yeah.
so initially I was like, cool, yeah, this is all about your 5-year-old self. That's the most imaginative version of yourself. And that's a big part of this
Right.
and whatnot. And what can that do? Oh, it can unlock innovation. Great. Innovation's a drop down in the bureaus or in the buyer's mind. So we're innovation speakers now. So we're the crossroads of authenticity and innovation or purpose and innovation.
Mhm.
So I ran with that for a minute and it was closer, but it wasn't there yet. And so
Yeah.
first of all, you have to keep taking inventory. So when you continue to take inventory and you can no longer look yourself in the mirror or look your audience in the face and give the same talk or use the same promotional items or
Yeah, yeah,
storylines,
yeah.
and you know there's more and you're not giving that to them, that's when you know you have to rebrand, in my mind. And that obviously that's different for everyone and you have to
Good.
continually look at
Yeah,
it.
it's interesting. So I and again, I come from this world and it's one of those things that those of us who are steeped in it get together as talking heads and debate the definition of a brand, right?
Right. Yes. Well, we
And
know it's not just a logo.
yeah, right. But it's interesting, and one of the things I've been writing, voraciously through this conversation, which has been just illuminating for me in so many wonderful ways, and I'm so grateful, um, is kind of challenging. And I know this might be interesting for you too, because you have a background in creative and you kind of come from this world as well.
Mhm.
Is that maybe the definition of a brand? I started with this was, brand equals who you are or who we are.
Mhm.
But I wonder if it's actually because you were saying, listening to what your audience is saying as a brand is who others think you are.
And
Which
and
to me,
and
when you go ahead,
I
yeah.
would challenge it one step further to
Uh-huh.
a brand is what others believe you are.
Yeah,
Because I mean, that allows us to include thinking and feeling. When
right.
someone believes in something, they think it's one way and
Mhm.
they feel it's one way. And that's the power of believing.
Yeah, it's so good. But what's interesting to me about it also in the context of of a rebrand, right?
Mhm.
Is maybe like where you get to that moment where there's a misalignment between who you are and what others believe you are. And so there's some
Yes.
course correction I think that takes place to take back the reins of this narrative.
That's well, you nailed it. And first of all, especially once you're in the game, like I am now, where I've got a podcast, I'm already a speaker, my body works out there, I've written 2 books. Whatever a lot of the people that don't live in my house or were friends with me in high school um, believe about my brand is from what I put out there. And then so as that shifts, that's why we have to maintain the reins. So important because if that shifts, it's our job to let them know that so that they can reframe their beliefs. And some people
Mhm.
might be like, I'm not really into this new thing. I like this old thing, and I'll just like Pro Jam. All right, I 10 changed my life. I learned guitar from an hours the first year of just with electric guitar at 15 years old, like trying to
Yeah.
figure out what the heck it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
Because I don't know why I didn't think to get a teacher, but I just didn't. But like I love 10. And like there's a couple of stuff, daughter, and a couple things here and there that I love since then, but
Mhm.
it's just not the same. And I'm okay with that. I don't follow Pearl Jam currently, but 10 is still like a part of my soul.
Totally.
And
Totally.
and you know what? Eddie Vedder and Pearl Jam have taken it where they needed to take it. And it's beautiful. And I respect where they took it. I just couldn't go with them, and that's okay.
Mhm.
And I actually have not even ever thought of it in this context until
Mhm.
this moment. I've not actually said that out loud. It's very interesting. That's okay though, because I can still connect with them with 10, and I can connect now with a new thing.
Mhm.
And but it's important that all of us stay true to that. And if not playing the songs from 10 is going to fulfill Eddie and the team for the rest of their lives,
Yeah.
it's great that they changed it. Just because it doesn't fit me,
Right.
and all of the greatest people in this world weren't they were cognizant of people's opinions, but only as much as it was a mirror
Mhm.
that checked out with who I was.
Mhm.
Now here it comes. It has to also be confirmed by does this match with my 5-year-old self? That's where this becomes
Interesting.
yes,
Interesting. Mhm.
that's the guardrails. That's the litmus test. Because otherwise I can follow everybody off a cliff again just because I'm getting all this feedback from them and that's what they believe about me. So you still have to have a litmus test or guardrails or filters to figure out, does this match
Hmm.
with who I am?
Yeah, yeah.
And as we said before, who I am is who I was before the world started to change me. All right. So this is wonderful. Sarah, thank you so much for being on the show. We're definitely going to be doing this again. Where do people find you, Sarah? If they're looking you up,
Oh,
where do we find you?
you can find me, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm at the Sarah E, it's just Sarae. You
Love
can
it.
find me on Instagram, it's Sarah E. Smith, no H, just Sarae. I fly under the radar, and I like to keep it that way. I've been kind of wrangling whether or not I'm gonna continue that approach, and I have every intention to do so, but I am easily through Frankie, just a phone call or a text away.
There you have it. I love it. Okay, so for those of you listening, welcome again to the School of Weird podcast, and we cannot wait to have you on our next show. Until next time, thank you so much for listening and watching.